The silence weighed heavier than the contract sliding across the burnished wood. 15 executives stared as Everett leaned back, satisfaction curling the corners of his mouth while I read the paper that would effectively end my career if I signed it. A 2-year non-compete covering all agricultural innovation? I looked up, fighting to keep my voice steady. This extends beyond standard protection. Consider it recognition of your value, Bryn. Everett's tone carried that familiar condescension that made my skin crawl. Your drought-resistant grain yields are impressive. The board agrees we need insurance. The room's ventilation system hummed in the silence. Nobody met my eyes except Everett, who hadn't stopped smiling since I'd walked in. 3 years developing solutions that tripled company value, I said. 18-hour days. And this is how loyalty is rewarded? Everett glanced at his watch. The industry understands hierarchy. Your contributions were made under my guidance, using company resources. He gestured toward the legal team, standard procedure for someone at your level. My fingertips went numb as I flipped to page 2, where the restrictions expanded to all agricultural research globally. I'd be unable to work in my field for 24 months. My research would sit idle while people starved. This isn't protection, I whispered. It's ownership. Let's not be dramatic. Everett stood, adjusting his cuffs. Your signature, or we'll need to discuss alternative arrangements for your departure. The threat hung between us. Everyone knew what happened to Amani, my predecessor, blacklisted, her reputation shredded after crossing Everett. Last I heard, she was teaching high school science in another state. Alternative arrangements, I repeated. I have connections at every agricultural innovation company worth mentioning, he said, voice dropping. One conversation suggesting you're difficult, untrustworthy, with proprietary information. Who would risk hiring you? The legal counsel shifted uncomfortably. Sign this non-compete or I'll destroy your career in this industry, Everett continued, sliding a fountain pen toward me. Everyone knows my influence extends beyond these walls. I lifted my water glass, buying seconds to think while 15 pairs of eyes tracked my movements. My hand shook slightly, water rippling against glass. Is this really necessary? I asked. Absolutely. He uncapped the pen. Your recent work has become too valuable to risk losing. Just protection for the company. What he didn't say was how 6 months earlier, I'd discovered my presentation materials altered before investor meetings. My contributions appeared under his name, my innovations presented as his vision. When I'd questioned this privately, he'd dismissed me. The company owns what you create, he'd said. I speak for the company. I thought about every weekend spent in the laboratory, every moment I'd missed with my dying father, how during evaluations, Everett described my work as adequate, while my innovations generated millions. Consider what's at stake, he continued, tapping the contract. Nobody challenges me and stays relevant in this field. Remember what happened to Amani? I picked up the pen, weighing it in my hand. Several executives exchanged glances. They expected submission. Everyone always gave Everett what he wanted. There's a third option, I said quietly. His confident expression faltered, then hardened. There are only 2 choices here, he said, voice rising. Sign or watch your career disappear. I placed a different paper on the table. An offer letter. Your largest competitor approached me last month. Wait, let me pause this story for just a moment. If you're enjoying this corporate revenge tale so far, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to catch more stories just like this one. I'd love to know what you think might happen next. Drop your predictions in the comments below. Now, let's get back to see what happens when Bryn finally stands up to her manipulative boss. My name is Bryn Averill, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the lead agricultural researcher at GrowRight Innovations, a position I'd fought for since graduating with my doctorate in agricultural engineering 7 years ago. Growing up on a struggling family farm in the drought-plagued Midwest had shaped my singular focus, developing crops that could thrive with minimal water. Watching my parents lose everything had carved determination into my bones. When Everett recruited me from graduate school, promising resources and support to bring my innovations to struggling farmers worldwide, I believed him. His reputation as a visionary drew me in. Articles praised his commitment to fighting global hunger. Awards lined his office walls. The reality proved different. My first week, a senior researcher pulled me aside. Keep your breakthrough ideas close, she whispered. Write everything in your personal journal, not the company system. I dismissed her warning as competitive paranoia, until I noticed patterns. Presentations I'd prepared mysteriously altered before reaching investors. Successful test results delayed when quarterly reviews approached. Critical data missing after Everett visited my laboratory, just checking in. Now, watching color drain from his face as he scanned the competitor's offer, I remembered every manipulation, every casual dismissal when I raised concerns. Impossible, he spluttered, knuckles whitening around the paper. Your confidentiality agreement remains unbroken, I replied. They approached me based on my published work from before joining GrowRight. 3 independent attorneys reviewed my position. His hands trembled slightly before steadying. He looked up with a calculated smile that chilled me. This means nothing. One call from me, and this offer vanishes. Who will they believe? A disgruntled employee or an industry leader? My confidence wavered. He might be right. His network ran deep. That's not all, I continued, voice steadier than I felt. While packing my laboratory materials yesterday, I made an interesting discovery. From my case, I removed a photocopy of my research journal with a visible tear where a page had been removed. The missing formula that delayed the Rivera project last quarter, the one that cost weeks of progress, I wondered who might have taken it. Recognition flashed across his face, quickly replaced by dismissal. A missing page? That's your evidence? Absolutely pathetic. When maintenance mentioned seeing you in my laboratory after hours, I became curious about other accidents that happened over the years. Several executives shifted uncomfortably. Everett's jaw tightened. The competitor didn't just offer employment. They offered me my own division after seeing my analysis of how certain projects mysteriously stalled whenever executive bonuses were being calculated. Director Valencia, who'd always seemed skeptical of Everett, leaned forward. What exactly are you suggesting, Dr. Averill? Everett interrupted. This is clearly manipulation. She's trying to create drama to justify breaking her contract. For a moment, heads nodded. I was losing them. My analysis includes statements from 5 former researchers, I said, voice stronger. They've been waiting for someone to speak up. Valencia extended her hand. I need to see this immediately. Everett reached for my case, but 2 executives moved to block him. This meeting is over, he shouted, standing abruptly. I disagree, said Valencia calmly. We appear to be just beginning. I gathered my belongings, heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. 3 years of careful planning culminating in this moment. I believe my departure is clear, I said. As for ruining my career, agricultural regulatory bodies would find it troubling how innovations that could address global food insecurity were deliberately sabotaged for personal financial gain. As I walked toward the door, I paused. That breakthrough announcement planned for next week? I made an enhancement that increases yield by another 30%. You'll find it with my new research team. The argument erupted before I closed the door behind me. By the time I reached the parking area, Valencia had texted requesting a private meeting. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, nausea rolled through me as I started my car. Because despite everything I'd said in that room, I had no competitor offer, no team waiting, nothing but a hastily created bluff and the burning certainty that I couldn't let Everett win again. What I did have was evidence, not enough to prove legal wrongdoing, but enough to raise serious questions. And I had 24 hours before Everett discovered my deception and unleashed his promised destruction on my career. The truth was, I had nowhere to go. My savings would last 3 months at best. My entire professional network existed within Everett's sphere of influence. Every connection, every reference, every potential employer knew him. My phone buzzed with a text from Imani. Did you do it? I pulled over, unable to drive through the tears blurring my vision. For months, I'd gathered information, building a case against Everett's systematic theft. Imani had helped secretly, connecting me with others he'd ruined. Yes, I typed back. But now I need the second part of the plan to work. Valencia is smart, Imani replied. If she believes you, she'll act. But that was the question. Would she? Or had I just committed career suicide based on nothing but hope and desperation? I had one chance to convince Valencia that Everett had been undermining the company for years. One chance to prove I was worth saving while he deserved to fall. And if I failed, Everett would ensure I never worked in agricultural research again. The light faded as I sat in my car, staring at nothing, wondering if courage and truth were enough to defeat power and connections. Tomorrow would tell. My phone rang, displaying Valencia's name. Too soon for good news. Too soon for anything but trouble. This was it. The moment I'd discover whether I'd just won my freedom or destroyed everything I'd worked for. I answered, my future hanging on her first words. Dr. Averill. Valencia's voice came through sharp and clear. We need to meet. Immediately. My throat tightened. Of course. Where? The coffee shop across from Willowbrook Park. 30 minutes. She disconnected without waiting for my response. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The neutral tone told me nothing about what awaited. Valencia was known for her unreadable expressions, her methodical approach to business. She'd been with the company longer than Everett had seen 3 CEOs come and go. Traffic crawled through evening rush hour. Rain started, light at first, then a downpour that matched my churning thoughts. By the time I parked near the coffee shop, my clothes stuck to my skin from the dash through the storm. Valencia sat in the back corner, 2 steaming mugs on the table. No tablet, no papers, unusual for someone who documented everything. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back severely, her expression giving nothing away. "Sit," she said as I approached, sliding a mug toward me. I lowered myself into the chair, heart hammering so loudly I wondered if she could hear it. "You made quite the exit today," she began, studying my face. "Bold claims require bold evidence. I have what I presented, which amounts to circumstantial connections and testimony from disgruntled former employees." She cut me off, sipping her coffee. Not enough to remove someone of Everett's stature. My stomach dropped. The plan was failing already. "However," she continued, "your accusations align with patterns I've observed over 7 years. Patterns I could never quite substantiate." A flicker of hope sparked, but I kept my expression neutral. "What does that mean for me?" "It means I spent the last hour reviewing quarterly performance metrics against project delays." Valencia leaned forward. Interesting correlations emerged. She pulled out her phone, sliding it toward me. On screen was an email from GrowRight's largest investor, responding to questions about altered presentations. "I have more questions than answers right now," she said, "but enough concern to pause actions against you while we investigate." Relief washed through me, immediately tempered by reality. Everett won't let this go. He'll make calls tonight. Already handled. The board has implemented a communication freeze while we examine your claims. A slight smile crossed her face. Everett is contained for 48 hours. 48 hours. The time window sent my mind racing. But understand this. Valencia's voice hardened. If your claims prove fabricated or exaggerated, I will personally ensure your professional reputation reflects it. And if you truly do have a competing offer, I suggest keeping it viable. The competing offer that didn't exist. The bluff that would collapse under scrutiny. Understood, I managed. Valencia stood, leaving her coffee mostly untouched. "I expect full documentation by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Everything you have." After she left, I sat motionless, rain streaming down the windows, blurring the world outside. 48 hours to build a case strong enough to convince the board. 48 hours before Everett could unleash his revenge. My phone buzzed with messages from 3 former colleagues. Word was spreading. The most recent from Imani. Valencia reached out. "What do you need?" What I needed was a miracle. Or a competing job offer that actually existed. I spent the night in my apartment, surrounded by research journals, email printouts, and project timelines. Every instance where my work mysteriously stalled or disappeared before evaluations. Every presentation that changed between my submission and the investor meeting. By 4 a.m., my eyes burned, but patterns emerged more clearly than I'd realized. Spreadsheets showed 13 critical research breakthroughs in 3 years, 11 delayed or altered before executive bonus calculations. The timeline was damning if someone knew what to look for. When my alarm sounded at 6, I had assembled everything except what I needed most. Undeniable proof of Everett's direct involvement. Imani called as I was getting dressed. "Valencia's investigation is moving quickly," she said without greeting. 4 board members are at headquarters reviewing files. Do they believe the claims? They're looking for connections between project delays and bonus structures. Your timing with this was strategic. I closed my eyes briefly. Not strategic enough. Without concrete proof Everett sabotaged projects, it's still my word against his. What about the torn journal page? Proves something's missing, not who took it. Silence stretched between us before Imani spoke again. There might be another way. Remember Zeke? My breath caught. Zeke had worked in IT security until mysteriously terminated last year. Rumors suggested he'd accessed restricted files. "He owes me," Imani continued, "and he kept insurance against future problems." "What kind of insurance?" "The kind that shows who accessed what systems when, including laboratories after hours." Hope stirred, but caution tempered it. That would be accessing company systems, without authorization. Only if you get caught. Amani's voice hardened. Bryn, Everett destroyed my career, took credit for my drought-resistant barley strain that's now feeding thousands. You're the only one who's gotten close to exposing him. I can have Zeke meet you in an hour. The risk was enormous. If caught accessing systems illegally, I'd be finished regardless of what happened with Everett. Where? I asked finally. The diner near the industrial park was nearly empty. Zeke looked different from when he'd worked at Grow Right, thinner, with a wary edge that hadn't been there before. Imani explained what you need, he said immediately, sliding into the booth across from me. Can you really access security logs? His laugh held no humor. I designed the system, built-in backdoors they never found. Why help me? It's a significant risk. Zeke's expression darkened. 3 years developing network security protocols. Everett presented them as his initiative to the board while I was on vacation. When I returned, my key card didn't work. Security escorted me out for attempted data theft. He pushed a small drive across the table. Access instructions are included. You'll have 30 minutes before the system flags the unusual activity. I stared at the drive. This could be considered criminal activity. So is sabotaging research that could help starving communities. Zeke stood. Your choice, Bryn, but make it soon. Everett's been making calls despite the communication freeze. My blood chilled. How do you know? Because I still monitor certain systems. 3 calls from his personal cell to board members last night. He nodded toward the drive. 30 minutes. Good luck. After Zeke left, I sat staring at the small device that represented both salvation and potential destruction. Using it meant crossing a line I'd promised myself I never would. Not using it meant Everett would win again. By 8:30 a.m., I sat in my car outside Grow Right headquarters, the completed documentation beside me, including what I'd found using Zeke's access, security logs showing Everett entering my laboratory at 11:42 p.m. on 6 separate occasions, each exactly 1 day before critical project milestones. The evidence wasn't absolute proof, but combined with everything else, it painted a compelling picture of systematic sabotage. As I gathered my materials, my phone rang with an unknown number. Thinking it might be Valencia, I answered. Dr. Averill, a man's voice, unfamiliar. My name is Wesley Grant, CEO of Terra Nova Agricultural Solutions. My heart stuttered. Terra Nova was Grow Right's biggest competitor. How did you get this number? I asked. Director Valencia suggested I call. She mentioned you might be exploring new opportunities. Valencia, who had told me to keep my competing offer viable, an offer she likely suspected didn't exist. I'm interested in discussing your drought-resistant grain research, Wesley continued, particularly the enhanced yield variations you've developed. Would you be available to meet this afternoon? My mind raced. Was this a trap? A test from Valencia? Or had my bluff somehow manifested into reality? Dr. Averill? Yes, I managed. I could meet this afternoon. Excellent. My assistant will text you the details. And, Dr. Averill? We're prepared to offer very competitive terms for someone of your expertise. After disconnecting, I sat frozen, unable to process what had happened. The pieces were aligning almost too perfectly. My phone chimed with Valencia's message. Board meeting, 10 a.m., bring everything, followed by another from an unknown number, Terra Nova headquarters, 2 p.m., Wesley Grant. I gathered my documentation with trembling hands. In less than 2 hours, I'd face Everett and the board with my evidence. In 4 hours, I'd meet with their biggest competitor. But something felt wrong. The timing too convenient, the sudden interest from Terra Nova too aligned with my needs. What if this was Everett's countermove? What if he'd somehow arranged this meeting to prove I was violating confidentiality agreements? As I walked toward Grow Right's entrance, security approached, not to stop me, but to escort me directly to the boardroom. Through glass walls, I saw executives gathering. Valencia nodded slightly as she noticed me. Beside her sat Everett, his expression thunderous. The security guard opened the door. All conversations ceased as 15 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Dr. Averill, the board chairman said, we understand you have information regarding serious allegations against our chief research officer. I stepped forward, placing my documentation on the table, aware that the next hour would determine not just my future, but potentially the direction of agricultural research that could help millions. Everett's eyes met mine, cold with fury and something else, confidence, as if he knew something I didn't. Before we begin, he said smoothly, I believe the board should know about Dr. Averil's unauthorized system access at 6:17 this morning. The room went silent. My future collapsed before I could speak a single word. The accusation hung in the air. My carefully constructed case, the months of planning, all potentially derailed by 6 minutes of unauthorized access. Is this true, Dr. Averil? The chairman's voice was measured, but his expression had hardened. Valencia watched me carefully. The room waited for my response. Yes, I admitted, forcing myself to maintain eye contact. This morning I accessed security logs showing laboratory entry times. Everett's triumphant smile spread, which constitutes a clear violation of company policy and potentially criminal activity. After discovering someone had been entering my laboratory unauthorized after hours, I continued, cutting him off. Someone deliberately sabotaging critical research projects. I opened my folder, removing the security logs. The system showed repeated access to my laboratory by Mr. North's credentials at nearly midnight before every major project deadline. Access that coincides exactly with unexplained setbacks that delayed innovations. Valencia took the papers, examining them with narrowed eyes. Unauthorized system access is still a violation, Everett insisted, though his smile had faltered. Yes, I agreed, and I'm prepared to accept consequences for that action. But the question remains, why was our chief research officer secretly entering a subordinate's laboratory at midnight before critical deadlines? The chairman turned to Everett. Well, is this accurate? Of course I accessed her lab. I'm responsible for overseeing all research. His confidence returned. As for timing, I often work late. Nothing sinister about ensuring projects meet quality standards. Before every milestone? Valencia asked. Always after hours when no one was present? Coincidence and confirmation bias. Everett dismissed. Besides, we're focusing on the wrong issue. Dr. Averil illegally accessed company systems after separation, then met with our direct competitor. My blood froze. How did he know about Terra Nova? That meeting is scheduled for this afternoon, I said carefully. After you contacted them yesterday, claiming to have proprietary research to share. Everett slid a paper across the table. Wesley Grant called me this morning, concerned about potential corporate espionage. Apparently, someone using your credentials emailed offering to bring GrowRight's drought-resistant grain formulations to Terra Nova. The chairman picked up the paper, an email I'd never seen, never sent. This isn't mine, I said, voice rising. I never contacted Terra Nova. The digital signature says otherwise, Everett replied smoothly. And now we have admission of unauthorized system access and an arranged meeting with our competitor. Board members exchanged troubled glances. My case was unraveling before I could even present it. Valencia frowned at the email. This doesn't align with what Grant told me this morning. Everett's head snapped toward her. You spoke with Grant? I called several competitors yesterday, she said, inquiring if they'd been approached by any GrowRight researchers recently. Standard procedure during misconduct investigations. And, the chairman prompted, Grant expressed interest in Dr. Averil's published work, not in any proprietary information. Valencia tapped the email. This contradicts our conversation entirely. Hope flickered, but Everett recovered quickly. Perhaps he was being cautious with you, knowing your position. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence as the chairman reviewed both the security logs and the supposed email. This requires deeper investigation before conclusions, he finally said. Miss Valencia, please verify the authenticity of this email through IT. Dr. Averil, we'll need complete access to your communications. Absolutely, I agreed, relief washing through me at the temporary reprieve. Everything I have is available for review. In the meantime, he continued, let's examine the other evidence you've brought regarding project delays and presentation alterations. For the next hour, I presented my documentation methodically, the correlation between delays and bonus calculations, the pattern of altered presentations, the statements from former researchers. With each piece, Everett's expression darkened further. When I finished, the chairman removed his glasses. This is deeply concerning, regardless of how the other matters resolve. Director Valencia, please coordinate with IT to verify system access records and email authenticity immediately. We should discuss what happens if Dr. Averil's allegations prove substantiated, said another board member, speaking for the first time. The implications for shareholder confidence. That's premature, Everett interrupted. We're entertaining accusations from someone who admitted to illegal system access and has clear motive to damage the company after being asked to sign standard non-compete agreements. And yet, Valencia observed. The patterns she's identified deserve scrutiny, regardless of how we discovered them. The chairman nodded. Agreed. We'll recess until it provides verification. He turned to me. Dr. Averill, you're free to leave, but please remain available. Your Terra Nova meeting. Should I cancel it? No, Valencia said before anyone could respond. Attend as planned. Record the conversation if possible. Let's understand exactly what they're proposing. Everett's face reddened. You can't be serious. We need clarity, the chairman overruled him. Dr. Averill, please report back immediately following the meeting. As the room cleared, Valencia fell into step beside me. Your evidence is compelling, she murmured. But tread carefully this afternoon. Something isn't right about that email. Outside, the spring air felt electric against my skin. The morning had been a tactical draw, not victory, but not defeat either. Now everything hinged on the Terra Nova meeting and whatever IT discovered about the fabricated email. My phone buzzed with a message from Zeke. Email traced to remote access from Everett's home network last night. Valencia has the data. A weight lifted from my shoulders. The fabricated evidence was unraveling already. Terra Nova's headquarters occupied a gleaming tower downtown, modern and imposing. In the elevator rising to the executive floor, my mind raced through possible scenarios. If this was legitimate interest, it could solve everything. If it was Everett's trap, I needed to be exceptionally careful. Wesley Grant looked nothing like I'd imagined, younger than Everett by at least a decade, with an intensity that reminded me of research scientists more than executives. Dr. Averill, he greeted me, shaking my hand firmly. Your reputation precedes you. I wasn't aware I had a reputation outside GrowRight, I replied cautiously. Your published work on drought-resistant grains impressed our research team years ago. He gestured toward a conference room. We've followed your career with interest. Inside, a woman I recognized immediately sat reviewing documents, Dr. Naomi Lin, whose agricultural innovations had transformed crop yields in arid regions globally. Dr. Lin insisted on joining when she heard you were visiting, Wesley explained. Your modified cellular water retention mechanism is brilliant, Dr. Lin said, without preamble. I've been trying to convince Terra Nova to approach you for months. The meeting wasn't what I'd expected. No fishing for proprietary information, no subtle questions about GrowRight's research. Instead, detailed discussion about my published work and theoretical questions about future applications. After 40 minutes, Wesley leaned forward. Let me be direct, Dr. Averill. We want to offer you leadership of our sustainability division, complete research autonomy, double your current compensation, and immediate implementation channels to get your innovations to farmers who need them most. The offer was everything I'd ever wanted professionally, too perfect to be coincidental. Why now? I asked bluntly. What prompted this timing? Wesley and Dr. Lin exchanged glances. Director Valencia called yesterday, Wesley admitted. She mentioned you might be available and suggested we review your published work. Once we did, the decision was obvious. Did she mention why I might be leaving GrowRight? Only that there were ethical concerns about how research was being managed. He hesitated. And this morning we received an email supposedly from you, offering proprietary GrowRight research. I immediately reported it to both companies as an obvious falsification. Obvious how? The technical details were incorrect, Dr. Lin explained. Whoever wrote it doesn't understand the science. The molecular structure described would collapse under basic testing. I couldn't help laughing despite the tension. Everett had fabricated not just the email but its contents, and made elementary scientific errors in the process. We assumed it was an attempt to create problems for you, Wesley continued. Valencia confirmed our suspicion when I called her. My phone vibrated with an incoming call from Valencia herself. I should take this, I said, stepping away from the table. Dr. Averill, Valencia's voice was crisp, but I detected an undercurrent of satisfaction. It confirmed the Terra Nova email originated from Mr. North's home network. Additionally, we verified the security logs showing his unauthorized laboratory access. And the board's response? They've called an emergency session. You should return immediately. She paused. How is your meeting proceeding? Legitimately, I told her. They've offered a research leadership position. Excellent. That simplifies matters considerably. When I returned to the conference table, Wesley handed me a formal offer letter. Take time to consider, of course, but we're eager to have you join us. I appreciate that, I said, accepting the letter. I need to return to GrowRight now. There are developments requiring my attention. Of course. He stood, extending his hand. We hope to hear from you soon. As I left Terra Nova's building, my phone buzzed with another message, this time from Imani. Board in closed session. Everett looking worried. What happened? For the first time in 3 years, I felt something like hope, but I'd underestimated Everett before. This wasn't over yet. The security guard who met me in the Grow Right lobby wasn't the same one from morning. His expression was grave. Dr. Averill, I'm to escort you directly to the chairman's office, not the boardroom. Something had changed. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, Valencia stood waiting, her expression unreadable. What happened? I asked quietly as we walked. Everything, she replied, and nothing like we expected. The chairman's door opened before us, revealing not just the board members but Everett himself, standing near the window, his posture rigid with barely contained fury. Dr. Averill, the chairman gestured to a seat. We've reached some conclusions that require your input. The atmosphere in the chairman's office was charged with tension. Board members sat rigidly in their chairs, expressions grave as I took my seat. Everett remained by the window, refusing to look at me. Dr. Averill, the chairman began, our IT department has completed their analysis. The email to Terra Nova was indeed sent from Mr. North's home network last night at 11:42 p.m. Furthermore, they've confirmed the authenticity of the security logs showing his unauthorized access to your laboratory. Relief washed through me, but the chairman's serious expression suggested complications remained. What's troubling, he continued, is the extent of what we discovered once we began looking deeper. It found systematic deletion of your research contributions from formal records, alteration of presentation materials before investor meetings, and evidence that project delays were not just coincidental, but deliberately engineered. Valencia slid a tablet toward me showing a spreadsheet. This tracks how your discoveries were systematically attributed to Everett in official documentation over 3 years. My throat tightened as I scrolled through the evidence, more comprehensive than what I'd gathered myself. Years of my work, methodically stolen. This isn't just about credit, the chairman said. The deliberate delays of agricultural innovations that could benefit struggling communities raises serious ethical concerns. Preposterous, Everett finally spoke, turning from the window. Though his voice projected confidence, perspiration beaded his forehead. This is a coordinated attack on my reputation by a researcher who couldn't handle standard corporate hierarchy. The evidence suggests otherwise, Valencia replied coldly. Evidence obtained through unauthorized system access, he countered, which the board seems willing to overlook while condemning me based on the same illegally obtained information. The chairman's expression remained impassive. We've obtained independent verification through proper channels after the initial allegations. The conclusions remain consistent. Everett's composure cracked slightly. What exactly are these conclusions? That you systematically undermined Dr. Averill's work to enhance your own standing and compensation, the chairman stated flatly. That you attempted to force her into an excessive non-compete agreement when she became too difficult to control. And when that failed, you fabricated evidence to discredit her. The room fell silent as Everett absorbed these words. For a moment, I thought he might admit defeat, but then his expression hardened. The board seems determined to side with Dr. Averill despite her clear violations of company policy, he said, straightening his jacket. I've given 15 years to this company, built its reputation, secured its largest investors. If you're suggesting my position is in jeopardy based on accusations from a disgruntled subordinate, your position is already terminated, the chairman interrupted. Effective immediately. Everett froze. You can't be serious. The decision was unanimous, Valencia added. Your personal effects are being packed as we speak. The color drained from his face as reality set in. This is a catastrophic mistake. I'll have my attorneys. That would be inadvisable, the chairman cut in. We've prepared a separation agreement that includes a non-disclosure provision regarding the circumstances of your departure. Fighting this would necessitate public disclosure of our findings. Everett's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies and finding none. When his gaze finally landed on me, the hatred there was palpable. You engineered this, he hissed. You won't get away with destroying what I've built. Mr. North, Valencia's voice cut like steel. You destroyed yourself. Now please wait outside with security while we conclude our discussion with Dr. Averill. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then, with one last venomous glance at me, he walked stiffly toward the door where security waited. As the door closed behind him, the tension in the room visibly eased. Dr. Averill, the chairman turned to me. We owe you an apology for what you've endured. The systematic suppression of your work represents a significant failure of oversight on our part. I nodded, still processing the sudden collapse of the power structure that had defined my professional life for 3 years. What happens now? I asked. That depends partly on you, the chairman replied. We understand Terra Nova has offered you a position. They have. Before you make any decisions, we'd like to present an alternative. He nodded to Valencia, who slid a folder toward me. We're establishing an independent research division focused on sustainable agricultural solutions, she explained. Complete autonomy, doubled resources, and direct implementation channels to get innovations to communities that need them. I opened the folder to find a detailed proposal, essentially the leadership position I'd always wanted but never believed possible at Grow Right. Why now? I asked, echoing my earlier question to Terra Nova. Because we recognize what we nearly lost, the chairman answered frankly. Your innovations have driven our growth for years, often without proper attribution. That changes now. Valencia leaned forward. We're prepared to offer significant compensation for past oversights as well. The details are in the proposal. I scanned the document, finding a figure that made my breath catch. This is generous, I said carefully, but my concern has always been impact, not compensation. Everett systematically delayed technologies that could help struggling agricultural regions. How do I know that won't happen again under different leadership? A fair question, the chairman acknowledged, which is why the new division would report directly to the board, not through standard executive channels. Full transparency, with quarterly public reporting on implementation metrics. The offer was compelling, more resources than Terra Nova could provide, with the infrastructure already in place to scale innovations quickly. I'd like time to consider both options, I said finally. Of course, we'll need your decision by the end of the week. The chairman stood, signaling the meeting's end. Whatever you decide, Dr. Averill, your contributions will be properly acknowledged from this point forward. As the board members filed out, Valencia lingered. For what it's worth, she said quietly. I've suspected Everett's methods for years, but could never prove it. What you did was risky, but necessary. Will there be consequences for the unauthorized system access? She smiled slightly. Let's call it a security audit that identified serious vulnerabilities. Sometimes the proper channels aren't adequate when systems are fundamentally compromised. As I gathered my things, she added, the third option you mentioned in that first meeting, it wasn't Terra Nova or standing up to Everett, was it? It was building a case methodically until the truth couldn't be ignored. I nodded. I never expected it to work completely. I just couldn't let him win again. Well, your strategy succeeded beyond what anyone anticipated. She handed me a keycard. Your laboratory access has been restored, if you'd like to collect any personal items. The research floor was quiet as I entered my laboratory for the first time since the confrontation. Everything remained exactly as I'd left it. Equipment still arranged from my last experiment, notes still on the whiteboard. As I gathered personal belongings, Imani appeared in the doorway. I heard, she said simply. Is it true? He's really gone? Effective immediately, I confirmed. She leaned against the doorframe, eyes bright with unshed tears. 3 years of your life, 2 of mine, 5 others before us, whose careers he derailed or destroyed, and innovations delayed that could have helped thousands, I added quietly. What will you do now? Terra Nova? I considered the question, looking around at the laboratory where I'd spent countless hours. I haven't decided. Both options have merits. Grow Right has more resources, she pointed out, and with Everett gone, it's not just about resources. It's about trust. Can I trust the system that allowed this to happen for so long? Imani nodded understanding. Whatever you decide, his downfall is still sweet justice. As she left, I noticed a small photograph I'd kept tucked beside my monitor, my parents standing beside our failing farm 10 years earlier. The drought-withered fields behind them had shaped my life's purpose. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I opened it to find a simple text from Zeke. Check your private email. Sent something interesting from the archive. I pulled up my personal email on my phone to find a single message containing years of correspondence between Everett and various executives. Messages revealing how he'd systematically undermined not just my work, but the work of researchers before me. Evidence more damning than anything we'd presented to the board. Another text from Zeke followed. Insurance policy. Use if needed. I forwarded the email to my secure account, then deleted it from my phone. It represented a nuclear option I hoped never to need, but appreciated having. As I prepared to leave, Valencia appeared at the door. "Decision made already?" she asked, noting my packed belongings. "Not yet, just ensuring I have everything I need while considering options." She nodded. "Wise. By the way, Everett refused the separation agreement. He's threatening legal action for wrongful termination." My stomach tightened. "Will that be problematic?" "For him, certainly." Her smile held no warmth. "The board has authorized full disclosure of findings if litigation proceeds. His legal team will likely advise against that path once they review the evidence. And if they don't, then truth becomes public, which serves the greater good despite temporary discomfort." She studied me for a moment. "You never intended to take the Terra Nova position, did you?" "It was leverage, not your goal." The question caught me off guard. I hadn't decided then. I still haven't, but you knew such an offer might exist. You researched their interest in your work before that meeting where you confronted Everett. I nodded slowly. I needed to understand all possible outcomes before taking that risk. Strategic thinking. The new division could benefit from that approach. She turned to leave, then paused. "Whatever you decide, Dr. Averill, your actions force necessary change. Remember that." After she left, I stood alone in the laboratory that had been both prison and canvas for my work. The decision ahead wasn't just about career trajectory, but about purpose and impact. 2 days later, I signed the agreement establishing GrowRight's independent research division under my leadership. Not because it offered more resources or compensation, but because it provided the platform to implement changes faster for communities that couldn't wait for corporate politics to resolve. Everett's legal threats evaporated once his attorneys reviewed the evidence. He left the industry entirely, taking a position with a financial services firm where his particular ethics found more compatible company. The first implementation of my enhanced drought-resistant grain began 6 weeks later in regions most affected by climate change. Watching satellite images of green fields spreading across formerly barren land, I finally felt the satisfaction that had eluded me for years. Sometimes, the third option isn't running away or submission, it's standing your ground and changing the system that tried to contain you. If this story of corporate justice resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of standing up to workplace injustice. Have you ever had to create your own third option when faced with an impossible choice? Share your experience in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the most powerful move isn't accepting limited options, but creating an entirely new path forward.